This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
It's the Blood Red podcast, courtesy of the Liverpool Echo. I'm Guy Clarke. Welcome along. The head of God as Alisson Becker helps the Reds boing past the Baggies and onto Burnley with their Champions League dream still alive. Will somehow try and make sense of a goalkeeper scoring for the first time in Liverpool's 129-year history, review the rest of the action and throw ahead to Wednesday's trip to Turf Moor. Joining me to do that, we have our chief Liverpool writer, Ian Doyle, and Theo Squires too. Doyle, I'll come to you first. You were at the Hawthorns, and the emotion when that went in must have been, I don't even have words for it. It must have just been absolutely amazing seeing it all, seeing Allison first of all go up for the corner and then be the man to get the winner in stoppage time.
Well, obviously I have no emotions, so it didn't make any
me. Even you must have given it a get in.
Well, it's funny. It's not the first time I've seen a goalkeeper score. I saw Tim Howard score against Bolton. It was back at Goodison, but the difference there is that for that one, I didn't actually see it until it had actually just about to go into the goal, because obviously he was taking a goal, not a goal kick, but he was kicking out of his hand, so he weren't paying much attention. Totally different at West Brom yesterday. Yeah, it was just, Phil, it was very bizarre. I mean, let's be honest. How many times do you see it? You don't see it very often. I mean, let's just pretend that it wasn't Allison who scored and it was just a player who scored. What a dramatic way to win a game that Liverpool need to win, and a great header from a corner. And then you add in the fact that he's the goalkeeper, and you think, well, really? What's going on? It was interesting because there were one or two people in the press box, I'm not going to name any names, James Pierce, but that were he was sat right by me. He was a little bit excited. Bearing in mind that he's the man who gets excited when Steven Gerrard scores in a 6-1 defeat against Stoke, so you can imagine what he was like. But there were one or two screams. It was actually quite interesting in the fact that even because obviously West Brom were already down, so the game didn't in some sense mean much to them. So people, even the neutral, most of the journalists are neutral in terms of that game. They were just like, couldn't believe it either. The people, everybody in that stadium, the stewards, whoever, just were like, has that really just happened? And I think it was more the fact, it could it have been any better timing? No. Could it have been a better goal? I mean, the only thing he could have done differently was perhaps do an overhead kick. And even then, you would have thought, well, that's just ridiculous. That would have been ridiculous.
The technique on it and everything was
exactly the same. The header
was actually
just so good. Yeah, the header was so good. And I mean, everybody will have seen the interview that he did after the game, which took place just in front of where I was sat, actually. So you could see how much it meant to him. And the other thing as well is that if you have a look at this when the ball goes in and Liverpool players celebrate, I cannot remember of all the goals Liverpool have scored. I can't remember a goal that's been celebrated quite like that for a long time. Bear in mind that they've had, the 4-0 against Barcelona, scoring in a Champions League final. But, look, I put a tweet out saying, look at Mohamed Salah, the way that he was when he went in. He scored, 125 goals for Liverpool? I don't think he celebrated a goal quite like that. Two reasons. One, obviously, the importance of the goal. But secondly, who scored it? And the fact that, we all know he's a very popular member of the squad, Alisson Becker, and if you saw that, say, with the interview, what personable chap he is, and we're all aware of the what he's had, what he's been through, both the the downs obviously of his father dying, and recently the ups of his third child being born. So it's been an emotional time for him, but it was just a great moment, wasn't it? I think it was you, Guy, who said that was the moment of the season, regardless of whoever you supported. So. If we've got an Arsenal fan saying, to be fair, there's not been much for Arsenal to celebrate, to be honest. If you've got an Arsenal fan saying that, then yeah. I mean, it was interesting the fact that it was almost practically the last touch by a Liverpool player in behind closed doors football, and it kind of underlined just how unreal the whole thing has been. That the whole thing should just finish with a goalkeeper scoring an injury time winner. What could sum it up more than that? Of how odd the whole thing's been. But take all that away, Liverpool have somehow, from a couple of weeks ago, they're now just 2 wins away from getting into the Champions League. And who would have thought that?
Theo, I'll come to you shortly, but Doyle, pressing question I must ask: was the KFC nice?
Well, is KFC ever not nice? Yeah, is that in reference? That is in reference to a couple of, for anybody who doesn't play on Twitter. A, why don't you? And B, I put a tweet out with about 5 minutes to go saying if Liverpool score from a corner in these closing minutes, I'm just going to get a KFC on the way home. Although I was always going to do that anyway. And of course, then Allison heads it in, and I just get loads of messages from people saying "Zing a Tau burger" and stuff like that. So yeah. No, there's never a bad KFC.
No, happy days. Theo, we saw the assist from Allison last year against Manchester United, and I don't think many people sort of thought that was going to get topped, but we saw the save against Napoli, against Milik late on in that one as well. But that probably is his biggest save for Liverpool, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, you'd hope so if they make it into the top four come the end of the season. I know we did the brief yesterday and you got the instant reaction then, but now what? Not quite 24 hours later, you still don't believe it. Like whenever the goal's coming up on Twitter, you watch it again and again and again. And it just doesn't seem real, does it? I know we've talked about the technique of the header, but Sky showed, didn't they, the other goalkeepers' goals in the Premier League. And you think, well, you've got Brad Friedel shinning one in. You've got Peter Schmeichel sort of volleying it at the keeper, and it's like deflected in at the near post. A few long punts over the top. This was a great goal from something that you'd expect a striker to score. I think match of the day, they were saying if it was like a Duncan Ferguson, a Dion Dublin, someone like that, you'd think, oh, that's a great header. Never mind goalkeeper. But yeah, it's moment of Liverpool's season by far. Like, I don't think they even need to hold a goal of the season vote. Alisson's going to win, isn't it? You might even get a goal of the season overall for match of the day if Liverpool fans hijack that, as we know they have done in the past for some awards. But yeah, it's just amazing how this can completely turn Liverpool's season. We were saying yesterday, should he really have gone up for it though? Like obviously, a draw wasn't the worst result. It wasn't the best result by any means, but West Brom could have easily countered attack and got a late nick away themselves. But when it all comes together like that, when it is such a rare occurrence, all you can just do is wow, just wow. If Liverpool make it into the Champions League, and that has been such a huge part of it, it's a nice end to what has been a very difficult season.
That's why you don't want a pragmatist in charge, though, isn't it? You don't want to be. You want the emotion there of football. Go on, send the goalie up. Let's.
Well, you
let's
say that, but look at the time where he went to go up and then didn't. That was Barcelona, where they were 3-0 down. He tried to go up to try and help get an away goal. He got told to stay back. Ended up making a save from Dembele, and then Liverpool won the second leg 4-0. So he chose quite well on both occasions.
No, definitely. But I think what Theo says there, goal of the season, I think surely there's going to be no competition for him. I mean, it's one of those, isn't it? In a sterile season like we've had of no fans, sort of seemingly fitting. I know you said a couple of times, Doyle, that Man City kind of win the league in this season because there is no crowd and they just completely dominate sides. But the moment of the season still belonging to the pure joy, elation and emotion that as football fans we all love to see and experience. Just sad that would have been right in front of the away end at the Hawthorns as well. But obviously no fans there to see it.
No, I think a massive difference, and we have to say, I'm assuming everybody here watched the FA Cup final between Chelsea and Leicester, and I think that gave, regardless of who you support, even Chelsea fans, let's be perfectly honest, they gave them a massive shot in the arm in terms of it looked as though it was real. It looked normal. I know it was 20,000 odd, wasn't it? It wasn't quite anywhere near full, but the noise that they made it sound like it was full at Wembley, and we've had that when Liverpool had the 2,000 fans in December, and when Fulham had 2,000 fans in as well. So I just think that over the weekend, just generally speaking, I think there has been a kind of a shift. I mean, obviously, if you ask Everton fans after what happened to them against Sheffield United, they might say something different. But even all supporters have got something to look forward to this week now, because they're all.
I think Everton fans have something to look forward to in terms of getting into their team.
Yeah, save that for the Everton podcast. Save that. In the next week, all supporters will have had a chance. Well, you know what I mean by this. They're obviously not all going to get a chance, but there's going to be supporters at every home game in the Premier League. So that gave them something to look forward to, and I think the way that Liverpool have won this game has just whetted the appetite for the final two games, because you can imagine Burnley fans will be massively up for it on Wednesday at Turf Moor. I know we'll come on to that in a bit. And regardless of what happens there, Liverpool are bound to get a massive reception. Can you imagine the reception Alisson's going to get at Anfield on next Sunday when he comes out? It's going to be pretty incredible, because they've waited a long time. And you know, just looking at the game itself, Mohamed Salah, 31 goals now, you know, so he'll get a huge reception. I think the players have been looking forward to it. And as I wrote in my verdict, when I was like doing my work after the game, Allison had finished his interview and he kind of wandered off into the tunnel, and suddenly you heard this massive cheer. There was only one thing it could have been. It was the Liverpool players congratulating him. And you've seen the videos from inside the dressing room with Fabinho with his can't quite believe it. And there was that kind of sense from the players, wasn't it? A sense, go back to the celebration. You looked at them, they were like, A, we are made up, and B, I cannot believe that's just happened. And even you have to say as well, everyone like, oh, look, Sam Allardyce, this, that, and the other. You have to say fair play to West Brom because they put in a massive shift, and you could hear them on the pitch. They were absolutely desperate to get something from this game because it still means a lot to play Liverpool. It means a lot to play for West Brom, no matter what the situation is. So for them, it was a credit to them, and if they'd have nicked a draw, I don't think anyone would have complained if Liverpool dropped points. I think they would have had only themselves to blame with the chances that they missed because, as much as Sam Allardyce said, they had great chances, West Brom. I thought Liverpool towards the end, you look at Wijnaldum's chance, you look at Trent's chance, Firmino had a half chance, Thiago was close with one. You suddenly look at them and you go, well, it's no wonder Liverpool scored, but a mild concern that it needed the keeper to have watched 90-odd minutes of these lot going, what on earth are you lot doing? And I'll sort this myself. I'll get up there and then puts one in. So yeah.
It was a weekend football needed. Like you think all year we've had VAR, we've not had fans, and whenever there's a goal, you don't know if you can celebrate it or not. And you've heard all these fans falling out of love with the game. Then you had European Super League and Premier League fans again falling out of love with the game. And you just can't enjoy it as much. It has been a horrid year where there haven't been these moments. And in this weekend alone, you've had Tielemans scoring that amazing goal in the FA Cup final. And not only have you got the roar of the fans, it is a goal that will get you out of your seat. It is that good, especially coming in the cup final. It's not quite Steven Gerrard West Ham, but it is one of the great FA Cup final goals. And then with Allison, granted, there's no fans, but that is another goal that creates that emotion in fans. Like, it doesn't matter where you are in the stadium or not, watching that, you will get out of your seat. Same as the Tielemans goal. Everyone will just been wow celebrating it. It doesn't matter what your allegiance are. And that's what we've needed after the year everyone has had watching football, supporting whoever they did. It makes you realise this is why we do it. This is why we love the beautiful game. And this is why this year's been a complete write-off for everyone. And now we've got this sense of normality back. It's hopefully going to be a rather nice last week to the season before hopefully very nice European championships with more fans back in stadiums. And then we can just put all of it behind us, go again 2021, 2022 and forget this pandemic ever happened.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting for Trent, isn't it? Because for most players, it'll be like, "Oh, do you remember that corner that I crossed for the goalkeeper to head in?" And they'll be like, "Well, I actually did another one.
A beautiful moment that hopefully sort of now sees the back of a wretched year without fans in grounds. Obviously, we have had those sort of 3 games that fans came back to Anfield for, but hopefully back in obviously some more numbers now from here on in. We best actually talk about the action, I suppose. Doyle, just on Allison being the man to get the goal, though. Gini Wijnaldum had the chance just before, and a few people have picked up on when the goal went, and he, the one man who didn't kind of celebrate. And we saw in the interview after the game as well, just what it meant to Allison. It sort of seems defining that it was him, not just being a goalkeeper. It's great when a goalkeeper scores, and I have to add in here as part of the Goalkeepers Union, great to see a goalkeeper wearing tracksuit bottoms score, because that's a technique I've followed myself too. But
how many Premier League footballers have scored a goal wearing kecks?
Exactly. Say that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no, it just sort of seemed right, though, that it was him. As I say, Wijnaldum had that chance. You mentioned Trent had one. Thiago stopped brilliantly by Sam Johnston, who, again, for playing Liverpool, seems to have morphed into Manuel Neuer to try and keep some of those shots out. But, just it being Allison and that interview you saw after the game, just how much it meant to him.
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't know what he's been through. I mean, we've all had, personal situations, but the one that he's had, he's been made even worse by the fact he hasn't even been able to go home to Brazil and be with his mother. So it has been tough for him. What came out of it as well, though, is that, as I said before, he's clearly a popular member of the squad, but the togetherness of the squad. I mean, we always talk about this, and a lot of football clubs and teams are exactly the same, because if you go out there week in, week out, alongside, you won't have to trust the guy next to you, the guy behind you. So all football clubs are like that, and the ones that aren't, I hate to mention Arsenal, but it is a little bit like that. Sorry, from looking on the outside in, let's put it this way. But you can look on the outside now, looking at Liverpool, you could see the way that they were all together. While I think what's been interesting for me over the last couple of weeks is that the shift in mentality, now that they've realised that they can actually do something, now that they've just regardless of who's out on the pitch, because Rhys Williams and Nat Phillips have been the centre backs for the last 3 games, and they're going to be for the next 2. Well, unless, as is inevitable, one of them gets injured. They'll probably just clash heads at Burnley next week, and it'll be the Adrian and Kelleher centre back just to remind them not to touch the ball with their hands.
Adrian fancies himself as an outfielder. Maybe we'll get some good old scoring.
Well, he can go in goal.
Let's go, did he?
Yeah. He can go in goal, and Allison can play centre back and head it clear. But yeah, I think. But my point being is that now that Liverpool have had that kind of boost, you can see that changing mentality. They look like a team who's knows what they can get, knows that they're capable of getting it. And you saw that at United. You saw that to a certain degree against Southampton. Weirdly, you did see it at Leeds, but they just kind of fell away. Newcastle was a little bit the same, so you were kind of worried. Aston Villa wasn't that long ago. They were scoring a last-minute winner there as well. So I think since the international break, they've just got their heads down and thought, well, look, we've been without all of these players all this season. We need to address A, the home form, B, the fact that we're not scoring that many goals, C, that we are having playing with these central defenders, but we're going to have to stick with central defenders rather than putting midfielders in defence. And it's paid off. I mean, Liverpool have conceded 1 goal yesterday to United, but they've been doing enough going the other end. And when you've got goalkeepers popping up and scoring goals, then you perhaps think that maybe the fates that have been against them for so much of the season perhaps are going for them, because they could easily have lost that game with that VAR decision for West Brom's disallowed goal, which is one of those, isn't it? I mean, it's the kind of one that has been going against Liverpool for most of the season. This one's actually gone for them. And unlike against Newcastle, when one did go for them, they actually made the most of it this time.
Yeah, definitely. He's 8 unbeaten now in the Premier League, 6 wins, obviously those 2 draws with Leeds and Newcastle United. But yeah, definitely another sort of 3-game stretch now for Liverpool. If they can make it 5, you feel Champions League football will be inevitable. We're going to get into the permutations shortly. But Theo, just in terms of some of the individuals and kind of how Liverpool even played, certainly in that first half, we know West Brom were already relegated, but it felt almost as though it was the other way around. Doyle saying before how West Brom really wanted something from the game. They were concentrated. They were bang at it from the get-go in the game. And it was Liverpool who were being a bit sloppy, certainly in midfield, giving a few niggly free kicks away, and just didn't really seem switched on for that opener for West Brom.
No, they weren't, but it's not something that is new, is it? It's something we've seen from Liverpool all season long, that at times they just haven't clicked. It's been a mismatch of a team for a lot of the campaign. Jurgen Klopp would have had to make changes for this one because it's going to be a big week, and he made the 2, I think, that we predicted when we were speaking on the podcast last week. But when you look to that bench, he was really right down to the bare bones, wasn't he, when he's got 2-3 kids on there who haven't featured much this season. Granted, he didn't need to have 2 keepers on there this week, but it's one where it's no surprise where Liverpool aren't quite at it. And then you've got the Rubens, or all the sounds of Sadio Mane not being happy, players out of form like Roberto Firmino. Granted, he scored twice at Old Trafford. There is always that cloud over their heads on whether they can turn it on. And while they have been on this 8-game unbeaten run now, it is still not quite the Liverpool of the last 2 seasons, is it? They're not destroying teams in front of them, though they are showing a bit of that spirit now where they can get these last-minute winners. And I think it's going back to that Villa game, it gave them that belief again that now they're almost in that position where they've got nothing to lose. Like they would rather be giving it all, conceding silly goals, but at least trying getting over the line. And they might be struggling along the way, but it's enough. And you think, well, when you've got the spine of the team back, because let's face it, they're probably missing 3 or 4 players from that starting 11 at least, then they are going to be a real threat again. And it's quite telling when you look at this 8-game run. Look, the 2 games they've dropped points in were the 2 where they've had to put the midfielder back at centre-back again. So even when they've resorted to Reece Williams, when they're playing 2 centre-backs there, they're getting the wins, which is what they've not been doing for most of the season. And it makes you wonder, granted it might come unstuck if you'd had 2 centre-backs for a longer length of time, but how differently the season could have been if Fabinho had been midfield the whole way through and Nat Phillips had been turned to earlier, or when you think if Kabak had stayed fit and he'd settled a bit quicker. It's just been a strange season. But if Liverpool can still get into the top 4 with all these circumstances, you'd fancy their chances again for it to just be a one-off collapse this year with a Van Dijk back in there, with a Henderson back in there. They should be right up there challenging City again. Like you look at the points gap, it's pretty similar to Liverpool and City last year. There's that similarity with City losing Laporte, so they were out there with their linchpin at the back for the whole campaign. Well, if Liverpool can respond by winning the League Cup, winning the Premier League, and at least reaching the Champions League final, I think we'd all be happy with that.
Yeah, I think it speaks volumes there that you're talking about Fabinho being in midfield when arguably he had his worst game of the season probably at the Hawthorns. He wasn't great, but Doyle, in terms of the rest of kind of the mainstays for Liverpool, Mane, of course, off form and had another frustrating afternoon, I think it's fair to say, at the Hawthorns. But the elite players, Allison, of course, getting the goal, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Thiago and Mohamed Salah, certainly those three outfield players really stepped up for Liverpool. And Thiago running the game, Salah got the equaliser, and of course Trent with the assist for the winner.
I thought Fabinho did all right. Don't know what you're talking about.
I didn't.
I thought he was okay.
What did you get in your ratings? Was it 6, 7?
6 or 7. Can't remember which. One of those two.
I thought he gave away quite a few fouls myself, and he a bit loose on the ball. I know second half he actually got involved in quite a lot of attacks, didn't he? But
West Brom had twice as many free kicks as Liverpool, which, considering West Brom had 24% possession, is pretty mathematically nonsensical.
I think a lot of people would say who's the man in the middle, but
who was it? Who was it? I didn't recognise who it was, to be honest. I didn't really see it. Going back to Liverpool's goal, I will answer your question, by the way. Going back to Liverpool's goal, it was obviously 18 seconds after the 4 minutes, wasn't it? And I know West Brom, you watched the replay. I don't know, it was somebody on their benches straight up to the fourth official when the ball goes in, going like this to him. But obviously Liverpool got the corner before the 94th minute, and they just gave them enough time to take it. And I'm not sure whether it came across on television. Did you see the 3 aborted kickoffs after that? It took them 3 goals to get the game restarted. That was a bit weird. I don't know what was going on there.
No, that
is that any moments missed?
No, because
it's too many.
Come on, I can't sell that one. But yeah, as you say, the big players have stepped up for the big moments. Salah again with his goal, which while Mane didn't play well, certainly in the second half he was pretty awful, wasn't he? I actually thought he did all right first half.
He won the corner.
Second, he won the corner and he set up the goal for the first goal. So even when he's playing not great, he's still making a positive contribution. Plus, he was up against about 15 West Brom defenders at the time, so wasn't easy for him. But yeah, Salah. I mean, in the second half as well, I thought, well, I'm not even sure he had possibly one chance which got blocked and he was left, beat in the turf. He actually screamed through frustration, to be honest, in front of us. So, but I thought he kept on at it. There was Trent, as you mentioned again. I'm not sure whether it came through on the television, but it was just the pure desire of Trent, because obviously we could hear what he was saying, and when things were going wrong, he was over it 1 or 2 passes. He was getting annoyed with himself, and obviously when he missed the chance to score the winner. But like at United, second half he was just bombing forward all the time. Klopp spoke on Friday about the players being desperate. There was a desperation amongst the players to get to the Champions League from there, because he was asked the question about, do you need the money? He says, look, the money's important. He says, but from a joy point of view for the players, they want to be playing in the Champions League. And he didn't say it, but I would assume it means especially next season when there's actually going to be people back in the ground, and it's going to be something more akin to what they're used to. So, Thiago, look at his performance. He's somebody who's come on, world-class player. We're suggesting, no, he's come on in the last couple of weeks. But, in terms of his Liverpool career, with Fabinho in midfield, I think he's started to build a relationship with him and whoever else is playing in midfield, whether it's Curtis Jones or Gini Wijnaldum, could even be James Milner on Wednesday. We'll come to that in a bit. But he's also building it with the people in front of him, and he's also passing the ball quicker. And no one doubts his accuracy. Some of the passes he was doing, it was just, if it was any of us, we'd be like, oh, that was good. But from we're playing five sides, like,
passes as well.
Yeah. But I think he's always done that.
Trait.
Yeah, I think he's always done that. I think it's kind of just been overlooked. That's why he's such an important player for whoever he's played for, because he's been able to do that. I think was it a long pass that helped set up the goal for Bayern Munich against Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League final, because he played that long ball down the channel and then they crossed it in and then it was a goal. Yeah, so so he's got that in his locker. I just think he's just, again, and he's someone who he gets it now. And while he may have got it at the start, he had 3 months on the sidelines of being injured, and then in that time, Liverpool, when he came back, everybody else in Liverpool forgot it. So that was the concern for him. But now that everyone's back on the same page, I think he's making a massive difference. And yeah, Trent and Allison, forget the goal. I just thought he played really well overall. I thought he came out with, he commanded his box very well. He dealt well with the amount of corners that West Brom had. He made a good save from Robson Kanu, and then, as we know, he was there at the end to nod one in.
And even Trent with that recovery block from Robson Kanu as well. I think we all forget about that as well. The, as you say, desire and determination to get back in. He probably gave up a good 15, 20 yards on the angle and still managed to get the block in. Theo, I'll let you crack on with your point you were going to make.
I was going to say, you've got to give, I think, Jurgen Klopp credit for how well he knows his players. Like, you think all season long, he's been saying that he needs stability in this team. And it's no coincidence that when he's got stability in the team, they've gone on this unbeaten run, that we're seeing the best of Thiago when he's able to play game after game, when he's able to complete 90 minutes. It's not the fact that he wasn't playing well as such earlier in the season. He was just still recovering from COVID, adjusting to English football, adjusting to this really strange season. And then credit to Trent Alexander-Arnold as well, because I don't buy into the myth that he's had an awful season and that he's only turned his form on in the last month. I think he's been good for a good 2-3 months now, and it went under the radar somewhat. But he has really stepped up since that England snub. Like when he got the armband for the first time against Midgetland, I can't even say them properly, so that's offensive. Midgetland. But yeah,
do you go there? Do you go there, Theo?
Wait, be kind. But yeah, since he got the armband,
that's a theme park that you don't have to be a certain height for.
I didn't think he really put in a captain's performance in that one. He was quiet, and that's pretty much how the first half of his season went. But you could really hear him on the coverage yesterday, and it's been the case for the last few games where without Henderson, when they've known he's been out for the season, without Milner, without Van Dijk, he has stepped up and he's been this leader. We all know he wants to be Liverpool captain one day, and you're starting to see that leadership quality in him. And it's in a season where Liverpool haven't really had many players properly step up and take responsibility like that. So it's great to see him do that, because you have been looking at this squad going, where are the leaders? Considering they've got the Egypt international captain, they've got the Scotland international captain. But then, as a completely different point as well, I think it was quite telling that when Salah got his goal, the first thing he did was make a really big point of well done to Sadio Mane for creating that. So we've spoken about the Alisson goal, the celebrations there, the squad harmony there. But we all know there's been these whispers that Mane and Salah don't get on, they don't pass to each other. But they know how important each other was for that goal. And after the fallout, or whatever you want to call it, with Klopp in midweek, they want to make Sadio Mane feel loved. They want to make Mohamed Salah feel loved. All these players, because they know if they're loved, they're at their best, then Liverpool got the best chance of finishing in the top four this season.
Can I just mention the centre-backs? Yeah. It was interesting because I actually thought Reece Williams was the better of the two yesterday. Nat was a little bit, not all over the place, but he was a little bit wayward, I thought, in the first half. Did better second half, but Reece Williams just kind of grew into it. And I haven't seen him for quite a while in terms of when he's playing for the under 18s and the under 23s. I think he's kind of showing now that he thinks that he belongs at this level. Whether he ends up playing for Liverpool long term, that I don't know. But you didn't look out of place. You didn't look at him, basically. You didn't look at him yesterday, and you didn't look at him at Old Trafford and think, oh no, there's a 20-year-old centre back playing there, and he's going to get exposed. Although there are 2 more games to go, and I'm pretty sure Burnley will be looking to put as many balls up against those 2 as possible.
Palace as well, Benteke.
Yeah, exactly. One game at a time. Come on.
Yeah. On that point, though, I think a lot of people going into the game would have thought, oh, yeah, Phillips away against the Sam Allardyce side. This is going to be just his game. Yeah. But actually, I think they were probably the opponents who probably exposed him the most. Hopefully that is a one-off, as you say. And
maybe that's because, as you were right, Fabinho just kind of went for a wander for a while. And in the second half, he was a little bit more steady. So, maybe I shouldn't have given him a 7.
But he did one of the worst passes you'll see. That cross near the end.
Who, Phillips?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, well, Robertson had a massive go at him about it. Yeah.
Right, let's get the calculators out though, and let's try and work out these permutations as it stands. Then, of course, we do still have 2 games to go. Liverpool in 5th, 3 points off 3rd place Leicester, and only a point behind 4th place Chelsea. Crucially, Doyle, the 2 of them face each other at Stamford Bridge tomorrow. So I've got it like this. If Leicester lose that game, they can still reach 69 points, which is what Liverpool can do. That would mean it'd go to goal difference if Chelsea, of course, win their final game away at Aston Villa. If Chelsea lose, though, Leicester could get all the way up to 72 points. Chelsea only 67. Liverpool can better that by 2. And if they draw, Leicester 70 points, they can reach Chelsea 68 and Liverpool a point more than Chelsea on 68. I think that's right, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the first thing you have to think, if Leicester get anything from the game on Tuesday, they are through. And that's taken any kind of goal difference. Well, not all goal difference, but it's taken the goal difference with Leicester out of the equation because Liverpool can't catch them. So that's that. In some ways, Liverpool prefer Leicester to win because then they may
It's
only
not
need
so complicated. Yeah.
They may only need 4 points. If Leicester beat Chelsea on Tuesday, Liverpool will probably only need 4 points, which would make things give a little bit of a safety net, wouldn't it? Because they'd want to get the points in the bag as soon as possible. But the reality is Chelsea are at home. They have the fans there. Leicester will have been celebrating the cup win. Chelsea will be determined to make amends, and they don't want to leave it to having to win the Champions League to get back into the Champions League. So they'll be up for it. So you have to assume that Chelsea are going to get something from the game. If they get the win, then it does look as though it may end up coming down to goal difference, possibly between Liverpool and Leicester. But Tottenham will still need something from the last game against Leicester, I think, to make sure that they're in the Europa League. I mean, they're not entirely out of the top 4 chase, are they? I don't think, but realistically, they probably are. But mathematically, they're not. By then, they'll know. But they'll still be in a kind of a battle for wanting to get in the Europa League rather than the Europa Conference League with West Ham, and it would be Liverpool or Chelsea, wouldn't it? So, yeah, I think, and what Chelsea are at Villa, you'd have to assume Chelsea are going to win that. I think Villa have kind of just slipped away in the last couple of years now.
I'd say the Champions League final that they'd be more likely to rest players, wouldn't they? And you think Villa in front of the fans?
They still need 4
weeks off, isn't it? It's a full week, and they'll want to be back. They want to be in the Champions League, especially what happened in the FA Cup. What happened in the FA Cup? There's no way they're not going to go strong in these last 2 games. No chance. Then they'll be massively up for beating Leicester. So I think if Leicester win that game, I'll be amazed. But that was the one result that perhaps that Liverpool will want more than any, because it does give them possibly that little bit of leeway.
Yeah, and in terms of the goal difference, Leicester at the moment on plus 21, Chelsea plus 22, and Liverpool plus 21, the same as Leicester. So it could go to goal difference. But Theo, I was texting you guys before we came on air. We can't end up, we don't think, with a Champions League playoff, unfortunately.
No, that's a shame. It's because of the Mohamed Salah goal, isn't it? Away at Leicester, being the head-to-head would take it away. But it's funny when you look at the table and you look at that goal difference, well, you think how crucial could those 7 goals Liverpool scored against Palace, or the 7 they conceded to Villa, come into this? Or when you think Chelsea, they've not scored as many as the other 2. Well, Timo Werner's not exactly been flying for them, has he? The fact that it can come down to such small margins, it would have been nice if we'd had a playoff. Granted, Liverpool aren't going to win a trophy or anything, but do you not want the drama of that, Doyle?
No, it's another game for me to go to. I've had enough.
Another game for you to go to. You'd have actual fans there, something riding on it. It's a cup final of sorts. But like we were saying yesterday on the debrief, as much as you look at Leicester, you look at Chelsea, they've got other influence coming into this, whether it's an FA Cup final hangover, they've got a mental hangover from missing out last year and not wanting to repeat that. They've got the Champions League final to look forward to. Liverpool just need to focus on their own games and get the points in the bag. And you'd like to think it should be enough. Hopefully they won't be relying on the keeper to be getting last-minute winners in the next 2. But it's been a crazy season, so we'll wait and see what actually happens.
I think if Chelsea win, they go up to 67, don't they? I'm just doing off the top of my head, yeah. And that would leave Leicester on 66, and Liverpool will be on 63 with a game in hand. Yeah. Imagine if that happens, and then Liverpool beat Burnley. Then you've got the 3 teams, a point between them. That last day of the season is going to be incredibly tense, isn't it? Because there will be goals. The games will change. It'll shift around. And I think
they say peak Barclays, don't they, the kids?
Well, don't.
Well, you're the youngest one out. They
don't until yesterday when I started seeing it a bit like, oh. Yeah, it's like, who's the sponsors of the Premier League, by the way?
There is none.
Exactly. Yeah. Why are they calling it?
Yeah.
But may as well just call it the Today newspaper, which doesn't even exist, used to sponsor the top flight. So why don't they call it Peak Today? That doesn't make any sense.
It's not like you, Doyle, to get angry over things that don't matter. But let's anyway talk about the game with Burnley. Fans going to be there. I think they've got 6,500. Have they? Am I right in thinking?
I think it's 4.5 actually.
Oh, is it 4.5? Right.
Oh yeah, because
it's 3.5.
There's actually nobody going.
Yeah,
I know they're giving the tickets away for free, aren't they? Season ticket.
Yeah, that was a really good gesture, by the way. So, I mean, they'll be well up for it in that sense. But I actually think it'll help Liverpool because they've been to Burnley before. They've actually got quite a decent record there over the last couple of seasons. if not at home against Burnley, away they certainly do. I think it'll help them because it'll just feel more like a game, and they'll know what to expect.
We're saying this without taking into consideration they just got battered 4-0 at home, so they'll definitely want a response there as well.
Yeah, it's 3,500. It's 3,500 Burnley fans.
Is it 3,500?
Yeah, that's
really. Yeah. I thought it's interesting. Oh well.
Yeah, that's how many there's going to be. But yeah, he's going to be an interesting one, and with that as well, I suppose important. The team Liverpool are going to pick. Let's get into our team selector and our match prediction now, guys. And I suppose in goal, we've got to go for one man and one man only. The goal scoring machine, Alisson Becker. Doyle, defence, what do you think?
Well, Liverpool had 10 players injured at the weekend, and I think we can't underestimate how difficult. Theo mentioned the players on the bench were. I got a call. And I just said I hadn't brought my boots. It was too late. So, plus I'm absolutely chronic at football, and I can't see. So other than those things, in fact, Allison in goal. I think they can't do anything. There's very little that they can do.
No.
Certainly with Jota being out, I thought they can't rotate the front three really unless somebody gets injured. Midfield's the only place they can rotate, and that's dependent on what you want to do. So defensively, it's just going to be the same again. I mean, the only way you'd possibly change it is if one of the centre-backs gets injured, which you'd have to play Fabinho there. But I actually think for this
Billy
game...
Mateo was on the bench, though, yesterday. He might well just get thrown into the...
I think it's...
I'm just saying.
No, I know. I think... Well, he's going to be... He needs the game time to get ready for the Youth Cup final, which will be next week, probably. No, I think it's... That would be totally unfair, wouldn't it, playing? Yeah. Totally and utterly unfair. I think... What might happen is Fabinho ends up being asked to step back a few paces and just help out Williams and Phillips in terms of the aerial threat from Burnley. And I think that's the only. It will be more of a positional change and a tactical change than any kind of massive changes in terms of the actual personnel. I think Liverpool have done quite well. I remember they played 4-4-2 there one year and won 3-1. I think Keita played central midfield and had a very good game. I think that's when Joe Gomez broke his leg. I think he was playing right back. So
he scored in that, didn't he?
Yeah. So that was a game.
That was 18-19, wasn't it?
That was about December, wasn't it? So that was a game where they made changes and it was a midweek game. And I think ideally Klopp would have wanted to do that, but there's only one more game left after this. I think this is, in terms of the legs, this is the trickier one because it's another 4 or 5 days before they play Crystal Palace. They'll have played this game. They've played 3 games in less than just around about 6 days. So this will be a tough one in terms of the actual fitness. But I'm not sure what they can do. But they had the defence. It'll be Trent. It'll be Robertson. It'll be Phillips, and it'll be Reece Williams.
I suppose then, in terms of midfield, Theo, is it whether you play Thiago away at Turf Moor or there maybe Wijnaldum comes into this one, or even Curtis Jones? As we said, there really isn't that much wiggle room for what Liverpool can do.
Well, the only other alternative would be 4-2-3-1, and then you have Shaqiri in there because I think Naby Keita, Oxlade-Chamberlain. Oxlade-Chamberlain could return if it's just been illness, but no word on whether Keita's going to be back, and it's just whether you bring Wijnaldum back in. I think it is getting to that point now, isn't it, where he's the player that's dropping out, that Jurgen Klopp knows he's going to go and he's looking to the future, but at the same time, he will want to protect legs. So you think in that midfield trio, the obvious change is Jones out, Wijnaldum back in. It depends how Thiago's feeling. Like, he's played a lot of 90 minutes recently and he has having a big impact on games. But do you want to save him for Palace or do you want to have him against Burnley? I'm just going to assume that he can power through. And then if he's tied for Spain at the Euros, who cares? That's their problem. So Thiago can keep his place, Fabinho can keep his place, and Gini in for Jones.
You go with that, Doyle?
No, I think Milner will play. I think Milner. Yeah, I think Klopp said that he was expecting it to be back. I think
okay, but Milner can come in as well then.
I'll get 12 players.
Thiago can have a rest then if Milner's back.
All right. No, I think you just told me to play Thiago now. I think it'll be a game where the subs will be crucial. I think they will change the midfield. I think Fabinho and Thiago and Milner will start, and I think possibly Milner and Thiago will go off at some point for Wijnaldum and Jones, because once you go past that, I mean, there's Shaqiri, as Theo says, and then there's not really a lot else. I mean, it was interesting, wasn't it, that Origi was on the bench on Sunday, and despite the fact Liverpool needed a goal and the last few minutes he wasn't thrown on. Although, to be fair to him, he hasn't played since March, and he was only restarted training. I think it was on Tuesday was the first time we saw him in it. and perhaps he was just on the bench to make up the numbers, or just in case something absolutely ridiculous happened, or well, which you could argue that it did happen. But in terms of actual peak players being injured and then having to come on, so yeah, I think Milner will play, Thiago, Fabinho, and then the front three is the front three, because what else is there?
Yeah, I was going to say voice of authority with Diogo Jota's season-ending injury, albeit we don't really know how long it is, but with a week left of the season, that is going to be that then. So the front three, Salah, Firmino and Mane. Match result then. Doyle, I'll let you go first. What's the scoreline going to be?
I think a lot is going to depend on that Chelsea game,
Yeah.
Because if Leicester win, although I don't think that they will, I actually thought it's like the thing about Allison going up. What made it interesting is that a draw wasn't the worst result ever for Liverpool yesterday. I know it wasn't the perfect result, but if they'd have lost, it wouldn't have given them any kind of, they would have been totally reliant on snookers or something like that. But a draw would have only meant one minor slip up by one of the other two, certainly by Chelsea or possibly by Leicester, and that might have been enough. Which is what makes me think a draw's not a terrible result at Burnley, but you can't be looking at draws at this time of the season. It is rare that Liverpool end the season with 5 wins in a row. I think it's only happened twice in the Premier League era. Certainly in terms of
3 times, weren't they, on commentary?
Yeah,
twice under Rafa, once under Klopp.
Well, it's definitely 2006, and it's also definitely 2019. In terms of winning the last 3 or the last 2, the last 3 is definitely, they did it under Benitez another time as well, but they're the only times in the Premier League era, which is always amazes me, because Liverpool so often have things to play for. But that's what makes me think that not Chelsea and Leicester. I know they can't both win against each other, but that's what didn't make. I wasn't surprised when you saw, say, Leicester drop some points and Chelsea lost against Arsenal.
Oh, 809, the other one, by the way. Sorry to interrupt.
Was it? Yeah. Because it's such a tense time, and often teams aren't used to playing for things at this time of the season, and obviously players are tired and players are coming in and out, and you have that kind of the variable of, like we saw against West Brom, the other team might not have anything to play for, but they put in a performance because they can, to remind everybody that they can still play football. So in answer to your question,
so you bought yourself some time there, Doyle. Scoreline.
In answer to your question, 3-1 to Liverpool.
3-1. Theo?
2-1 Liverpool. I'm going to think it's going to be very similar to the West Brom game.
Don't say that.
Allison,
I know you can't. Not quite that.
You wait 129 years for a goalkeeper to score 1. And then he comes around and gets 2.
Yeah, considering the last 2, I think you wouldn't be surprised if Burnley took the lead, but then Liverpool could fight back. Burnley, they've got likes of Chris Wood, don't they? Ashley Barnes. Those are the sort of players you could see causing Liverpool problems. And then you'd like to think that Liverpool can find a way. It's been an all right ground for them in recent years. Like, they got a good win there, didn't they? Was it August, September? And then obviously the one we've already mentioned a couple of seasons back. It's been a good ground for Firmino, for Salah, Mane. Hopefully 2-1 win. That'll be enough. And then all for it. Another 7-0 win against Palace on the last day in front of the home fans.
Yeah, 3 of the last 4 wins have come from conceding the first goal and coming back. I don't know how many more times they can afford to really try and pull off that trick, but we'll have to wait and see how it does play out. That's it for this edition of the Blood Red podcast. My thanks as ever goes to Ian Doyle and Theo Squires for joining me, and you two for listening and watching in wherever it is you have joined us. But until next time here on Blood Red, it's bye for now.
This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.